Excellent. Great to have you on. And look, apologies for the time mix-up, and I've had to talk to the team and just to make sure. So some of you, as you know, came on at 9, ready for 9:30. Some of you, of course, came on at an earlier time because basically what it said was 9:30 Perth time, but in actual fact, been 11:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, basically there's 3 hours difference, not 2 hours difference. So I explained that to my team. So we should have it one fixed for future without much hassle. So again, apologies for that. Moving forward, what we'll probably do is, how would you all feel if moving forward, we just made it at 9 o'clock Perth time, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time? Would that work well for people if we did that moving forward? Yeah, 9 a.m. Perth time, which would be 8 p.m. New York time on the obviously Tuesday night. And that would be 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Yep. So just make sure moving forward, we're going to make that a set time, and that will make things a little bit easier, I think, based on what people seem to be saying. So, okay. Excellent. So, okay, so let's get on with this now and get this moving. So what we've got now is we're continuing on, and we're now in, of course, the 3rd week of awakening your innate manifestation ability. And basically, so far we've done a couple and we've got ourselves underway. So just a little bit of feedback to get started. Now, by this time, we've had a couple of people already experiencing some unusual manifestations. Anyone had anything yet that they're willing to share, or noticing a difference in their language? Or just noticing already that they're starting to get a little bit more clear in their intentions? Just type in the text chat. We've had a few people messaging us about shifts. Nolene, so much this week. That's great to hear, Nolene. Max randomly received 500 from an old client yesterday. Yeah, that starts happening. James getting attacked. Yeah, it's always interesting, the different experiences, but one thing I really find is that nothing happens. Like, usually people start experiencing more clarity, more peace, manifestation abundantly, or they do start getting some kind of attacks. Jason T have had 3 deals come through. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, because you just start to get your mind into the framework, and that's well done, Jason. I mean, Natasha just feels abundant. Yeah, well, to be frank, Natasha, that is like the best possible thing that can happen when you start to feel abundant. And when you read the whole teaching by Joseph Murphy on the power of the subconscious mind, or someone who's possibly one of my favorite manifestation teachers, Neville Goddard, he actually, in his book, Feeling is a Secret, he pretty much says that if you feel abundant and you keep feeling it long enough, you will physically manifest that, because it's impossible for you not to. And usually you find when people start manifesting lack, it's just very simply that their mindset started believing it. So if you feel abundant, if you know it, then you'll basically start to experience it and live it. So the biggest thing to get it is when you start to feel abundant and can keep your mind away from looking at your circumstances, that's when you start to really notice the magic. And Robert says, feeling calm and relaxed and thinking differently. Yeah, look, exactly. That's a huge step, Robert. As soon as you start thinking differently, you get ideas come to you. This morning, I've been feeling so calm and at peace the last 5 weeks myself. I've actually not known what to do with it. It might sound strange to say, but I have been so much at peace. It's like nothing is bothering me if it's going on in my life. I'm just so certain in my heart it's all been sorted. And sometimes I've almost been thinking, well, I need to be taking a bit more action here. And I just let go of that thought. And then I just get ideas come to me. Like this morning, I just got a very clear sense of of something to do, just on a matter that I've been pondering about for quite a few weeks. I just woke up and knew what to do. Mitch says, I had an empty weekend and just picked up 2 gigs and work on the same day. Receiving the money I pitched to them, which is higher than my normal. Remember our manifestation, Mitch, about increasing your income when we had our one-on-one call? So there you go. You're just making a higher offer. And that's one way to increase your income. You just ask for more. Yeah, it's massive, Mitch. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Christine Norby, lol, yes, that state of mind. is so foreign to the 3D, 4D. Great eyes come to me. Yeah, great ideas. Mitchell, I'm confident about my worth. Yeah, look, exactly. Like as you start to focus on it and increasing it, you just start to do things like that, because the biggest thing that starts happening is you start detaching from the outcome and striving, and you start to realize that ultimately you are creating everything. And that in many ways, I can remember being at university and when I was studying law, and I remember I look back and almost chuckle to myself, because in my first 2 years of studying law, I didn't have much time to study, because I was busy at my work at the time. I was very, very much involved in my church and spiritual work, and in playing music in a band. So I had all this going on, and I remember getting fantastic marks about a lot of work, like really fantastic marks. I can remember a few years later, I actually started doing the same thing. I actually went and studied law again, and I had more time on my hands. So I remember thinking to myself, I could do even better. I could be winning prizes. The ironic thing was I worked longer hours, I studied longer, did more study, and I got worse marks. And in hindsight, I look back and I can see why. I was striving more, I was pushing more, and rather than just trusting that I would be led, this is what was, I started striving a whole lot more. Whereas in the first time, I just knew I was going to do well. It's hard to explain. I was so busy, but I knew I was on the right path doing law at the time. So I just basically was like, yeah, I'm just going to study it and do really well in it. And I just let go of the whole thing. And I didn't even care what marks I got. So Mitch says, I in turn have actually started giving more value. Well, that's just in alignment with the law of service, Mitch, that the more you actually give, the more, basically, the more the universe rewards you. So as you serve the planet more and give more, the more you give back. And I remember someone once teaching me and sharing with me, he said that basically when you have an abundantly large solution for something, so when you basically have a large solution for a whole planet, you'll get abundantly rewarded. If you have a solution that helps a small number of people, you'll get rewarded accordingly. So keep in mind that the more you can feel and think into serving the planet and doing that, the more you're going to attract and manifest abundance into your life, and the more you will do. So just keep that in mind, that the more you do that, the more you will actually attract abundance into your life. So Christine says that. She says that she's noticing the changes. Yeah, wow. So Christine, I noticed that I've been transferring some of the relationships around me using Joseph Murphy's power of the subconscious mind. So visually those things going really well and they turn around. Yeah, look, it's just doing it and realizing that one of the things where you've got nothing to lose is I used to often think, well, what happens if it doesn't work? Maybe I'll feel disappointed. But the truth is, life isn't perfect. Sometimes you will do everything right in your manifestations and it will seem not to happen. But the main thing is if you're getting it right more than you're getting it wrong, and you're seeing the results that you desire more than you're not, basically you're going to end up in front in life. And that's the thing to realize with manifestation. But the more you step into something and the more you do it and the more you start getting wins, you're going to end up in front. Because the truth is sometimes there are other factors at play in a manifestation, which you'll learn over these coming 10 classes that we do, but there actually is other factors. Like, for example, you may do some marvelous manifestations around your health and things don't actually seem to change. And that's not because it's not working. It's just that your higher self knows that there's things that need to be dealt with before that can actually take place. So as an example, let's say that you have a health issue because of a karmic something that you haven't resolved. Now, you can do all the manifestations accomplishing the realization about manifestation. So it's really important that you do that. So another example when it comes to manifestation, what I would say on that one is yeah, but you do something very similar when it comes to, let's just say that money, you do a manifestation around money or getting a large amount of money, but you got no real purpose for it. you might find it might seem to drag along. Let's say by contrast, you got manifestation for money to clear a debt and they're still holding up. It may be that there's a lack of responsibility. You've really taken your heart for the debt. Or it could be you're focusing too much on the debt, or it could just be you're not linking the two together. And sometimes it can actually go back to the root of it, that your manifestation, that rather than manifesting, say, 100,000 to pay a debt, you just manifestation completing your promises to the people that you've made, promises to, and that you've got everything clear in your life, and that you're clear in relation to your finances. And then miraculously, you may realize a manifestation of a clearing of that debt, if that makes sense. So it's really important that you start to understand manifestation and know that when you're applying it, it's a bit like the negative manifestations. And I often tell people the best way to understand manifestation as well is think of it in reverse. So if you're working on manifestation in reverse, as an example, you may sometimes notice that you're thinking a whole lot of negative thoughts, but life still seems to go on okay for a while. And you think, oh, okay, well, I can keep doing this. But eventually it comes back to bite you. And one day before you know it, you start reaping your seeds when you least expect it of what you've been sowing. I can remember, and this is just a really honest one, I can remember years ago, when I was on a little bit of a dealing with stuff in my life and my marriage was ending and breaking up, I started doing manifestations around getting all kinds of hot, women in my life. This is just being really honest. And I started actually working. But what I didn't do was do manifestations, what really back then in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I would have done it differently. I would have manifested something more on the lines of having an amazing spiritual connection in my heart and life with the feminine and with a great partner or the feminine energy, and open myself to what happened from there with abundance and ease or something like that. Whereas back then, my manifestation was a little bit more base. It was more like getting really hot women to have great connection, have fun with. So I got that, but over the course of, I got everything that I desired to experience, but of course, what it ended up doing was distracting me from some really deep issues I needed to deal with in my business, and I ended up going broke in my business and having my marriage completely end once and for all, and everything kind of happened. Because at the time, we decided to go into an open relationship, and this is kind of being really candid with all of you, just to teach you how this works. And I can remember thinking, how on earth did all that happen? And it was a really, really hard lesson for me about manifestation and really learning to actually fine-tune my manifestations as to what I really wanted rather than what I thought I want. So I hope that makes sense with you, to everyone. So Christine Norby, I've helped others around me transform relationships by teaching skills. Yep, so good, yeah. Yeah, perfect sense to Christine and to, yep. Yeah, so I hope for all of you that gives you a little bit of insight into manifestations and how it works. So it's really about getting your intentions clear and realizing it's not always going to be perfect, but sometimes you will give a manifestation and have instant results. And you'll notice that if you're doing this regularly, you will see results coming straight away. You will. You may not see everything exactly as you want it straight away, but I'll guarantee you that you'll see things and you'll start seeing more good things come into your life than things not so good. And generally, when the not so good things are coming into your life, they're usually karmic stuff that you need to deal with, or just other aspects to bringing a manifestation into play. And another very good example is that you may do a manifestation around health and healing. Let's say an injury, let's say you've got a lot of pain in your neck or a lot of pain in your arm. And after you do that, nothing seems to change, and you're doing the manifestation. And then you start coming across people who you start seeing ads around really good like exercise courses or yoga, or you just start thinking about yoga and you can't stop thinking about it. And this is what happened to me when I was doing manifestations around having excellent joints, when I was having joint issues. I just started getting this really deep compelling to go to yoga, and nothing could shake it. So I ended up finding a yoga school and getting involved. And I also got this compelling to go on a fast. Right now, I'm doing some manifestations because my health's the best right now it's been in years. And the only one thing that's not quite coming right is just a couple of minor issues in me. Like one at the moment is just around my fingers, where I had an injury, which is by and large 90% right. And there's still some minor residue still healing. And so I started doing manifestations and actually intentions and clearing the source of this. And it's interesting what's been coming to me, and I've been meeting up with someone who's talking to me about stem cells and how they can be used to regenerate cells and joints and everything. And then I've remembered a number I was given 2 years ago of a guy who's meant to be one of the best exercise therapist rehabilitation specialists. And his name came back to my remembrance yesterday as I was just not even thinking. So I will be acting on those things straight away. Now, excellent, Christine. So I'm taking steps to making it happen in the financial. Mitchell, you always make a ridiculous amount of sense, Warren. Thanks, Mitchell. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Okay, so now it's good, and you'll start to see that. So really get rid of distractions and really get ready here just to start to manifest some really good things, and have your water ready. Now, by the way, recordings, we're aiming to do them within 24 hours as our new standard, just to update you. I haven't changed this yet, but we're actually aiming to do that at the moment. And Sammy, who's now in charge of this, it's basically, you should be noticing they're getting up faster. And basically, it's on the membership site. So if you haven't got access to the membership site, let us know at our help email, and we'll make sure you get access. Mitchell, you deserve it. Thank you. You make me blush. Okay, so what we're going to do today is, as you can see from week 3, is a deeper look at the science behind manifestation and why it works. This is, by the way, this is the heaviest session that you're going to have. So just if your brain feels like it's exploding after this is finished, that's perfectly normal. So a deeper look at the science behind manifestation and why it works. So, and then of course we'll be covering more manifestation, doing specifically stuff around the 5-step process, advanced energy reading, energetic tax minimization, and stuff around money. So we'll be really covering everything, and then a final review and practical application, because the key is to get this working on a regular basis in your life. So everything is energy, and energy can be transformed. So this is the basis of manifestation. When you realize that everything in your life you're experiencing and feeling right now is actually energy. And it's interesting, for example, like Sammy, my partner, who's had a lot of pain in her right arm in the last probably two or 3 days. And she basically, when she's tuned into it and did some clearings last night, seemed to get better, and woke up this morning, it was still sore. And as she tuned in again, she got this remembrance that the exact same thing happened some time ago, and she went to a chiropractor, guy who we see is brilliant, who straight away said, I know where this is coming from. It was a spot around her neck, which he fixed for her, and then straight away her arm was fine. So of course she's booked in to see him today now. But so you see, manifestation can work in all those kind of ways to lead you to do that kind of stuff. And for example, by contrast, I was having some pain in my arms 2 or 3 days ago, and I was finding it hard to type. And I was doing manifestations and clearings and stretchings. It didn't seem to be solving it. So then I went to another level of manifestation when I asked, okay, this is what I call the next level manifestation, where I asked, what is this preventing me from doing? Now, what is it stopping me doing, which perhaps that I shouldn't be doing right now, or don't really need to be doing, or not meant to be doing? What's it stopping me doing? And straight away I realized, actually, yeah, it stopped. I'm actually feeling right now, because I was in the Mornington Peninsula, just to take some time, just to meditate, to really chill, to go deep into myself and really just swim a bit and just enjoy. And I don't feel this is the time for me to be doing a lot of work. So I just basically stopped working and took some time out and just did the bare minimum. And then literally as soon as I finished at the Mornington Peninsula and got back, my arms just went normal. Like literally just I woke up and they were fine, and I was back and not really feeling anything at all. So keep in mind, sometimes your body is just being your friend when things like that happen. And the same when it comes to financial stuff as well. Sometimes when you've got challenges, it's actually your higher self trying to give you a bit of a hand. For example, not always, but let's just say, for example, that you're having financial challenges. It could just be that your higher self is getting you a message saying your current business or line of work isn't really the path for you to go anymore, and you need to look outside of it. It could be that you're under some kind of attack or energetic attack, which you've got to clear. That's not a possibility. It could just be that your intentions and your manifestations and thoughts have sort of drifted off, and you become more negative about realizing it. And or you stop taking action. So just realize there's always a multifaceted thing happening, and I always start with a manifestation and a clearing to get my intention, and then just notice what happens if you don't clear straight away. Just stay in a space of knowing it's done, and then allowing things to unfold for you. So today, like I said, is going to be a bit heavy. So I'm just going through and consolidating a bit the last 2 weeks. And that's one of the reasons I make this such a long course, because my experience is you need repetition on this to really get it. And if you can get repetition over a 10-week period, you'll go away and it will become a lot more something in your life that you can apply. So we're going to go through some revision before we get into the heavy stuff. So we're going to be doing the heavy stuff, and then we're going to be doing a clearing. So today we're not going to do so much manifestation like we did the first 2 weeks. Today I'm going to do more teaching and then more clearing at the end, just clearing blockages and encoding some stuff into you that's going to help you. So these are the things that we've learned so far, and we're going to cover all these points in a lot more depth today. You're going to learn a little bit more about the scientific background to see this. The truth is, space and time really doesn't exist. That one, number 3, is one of my absolute favorite. That's changed my life back. For example, literally right now, you can be in the past. Sometimes what we've even done is we've actually sat down there, and when I'm doing a clearing, I've actually said out loud, and I just close my eyes and breathe and said out loud, I am now 8 years old, and I'm with my mum. And then I'll remember the exact incident, and I'll be there, and all the energy will come up, and I will clear it. So you can do that, because in that moment, the moment you say that, you are actually in time. Or you can say, one of the things they found, even, for example, in a lot of holographic chiropractic, and there's a guy I know in Queensland who does this. It's quite astounding how effective this guy is. He's one of only a very few people who can do this. But like, as he's treating you on a pattern through clearing your body, he will say, it's dark. And I asked him, and I remember asking him afterwards, why do you keep saying it's dark? And he said, because I found that this particular pattern, he said, tends to basically, if you clear it in the light, it doesn't necessarily always clear in the dark. So he said at first what I used to have to do was turn the light off and all that, and then on, which is really annoying. But he said they actually discovered that just by saying it's dark, the body registers it and starts assuming it's dark. The unconscious mind takes it. So he just said he found you could do that. Or even saying something like, it's day, it's night, it's dark. Or you're now 8 years old. I was working with a kinesiologist, I remember, who at one stage she was doing some deep shifting on me, and she just said, right, age recession, and then what showed up was age 3. So she goes, okay, we're back to age 3. Feel that there. And honestly, in that moment, I was age 3 and I could feel it. And then we went through and did some clearing on me, and it was very profound. So realize that space and time doesn't exist. It's basically, we're all in the now, and that's all that really matters. And generally, any kind of suffering, as Buddha once said, is when we start moving in the future, rather than just staying in the absolute direct now, or we go back in the past. So holographic theory, alternate timelines, all things are interconnected. The quantum realm is real. We also looked at taxes, and we looked at tax audits, and how even these are a product directly of our consciousness and how we're seeing it, and we create these very things ourselves. I shared how I use this quantum teaching and consciousness work and manifestation to manifest a perfect outcome in a tax audit, where I can honestly tell you I'd actually made a few mistakes in my return, and they saw the mistakes, nothing was hidden from them, and we did nothing about it. So that's what can start happening. I have a friend in New Zealand who had 72 tax officers turn up at his house to raid him because he was a known guy in the underground movement in helping people with stuff. He had like about 5 boxes of incriminating information and other boxes. They literally looked at every single box in his house except those 5. It was like they couldn't see them. And he had just created that protection. Yeah, 72, Christine. And it's like he said, they could not even see those 5 boxes. If you read the book, The Heavenly Man by Brother Yun, he talks about when he was escaping from jail in China, when he was led by Christ, by the masters, out of jail, which was an impossible maximum security, but no one ever got out, and there was 3 gates guarded. And he was clearly told to leave, and keep in mind his leg was crippled from the torture he'd received in the prison. And he basically walked out of the prison, with all the guards, the first time getting distracted by the phone, the third time they were put into a trance, the fourth time the guards on the wall were put into a trance, because there were 4 different levels to go through. And as he came outside feeling like he was in a dream, a car pulled up and the guy said, "Brother Yun, I can't believe my eyes. I was sent here, told at this time you'd be coming out of prison, and I didn't think it was possible." And so you read about it in the book, that he talks about the power of manifestation and connecting with the higher masters. I have to say I was fortunate enough to meet this man and in 2011 and actually have lunch with him through a friend of mine. And I don't think I've ever quite had anything happen like this before. I met him, and the moment I met him, I felt so much love coming out of his heart, I started to cry. And he just hugged me. And then he started, and then after lunch, he was praying over me and 3 others who were at lunch with him. And the whole time I was crying like a baby in a public restaurant. And he was telling me about my future and where I was going and how I was going to be used. And yeah, a lot of what I'm seeing now, it's quite profound. But the whole point is that this man literally walked and lived in manifestation. And just even as he was talking to me, I was feeling the power. I had this happen to me the other day, actually, as I was driving back from the Mornington Peninsula. I actually had a vision and I actually was seeing it in the physical. I actually saw the lights open up and I was seeing past galactic ages and everything. So the more you manifest and the more you open your consciousness, you start seeing this more and more. And I actually was seeing a time past when I was in the Pleiades, and I actually was running an awakening center similar to what I'm doing now in the Pleiades. And it was quite profound. So the more you open up and the more you start to see everything is perfect and happening in divine right order and divine right timing, the more powerfully you start to manifest. And the best way to think of it too is think of it like if you've got kids or close friends. Those who are needy, demanding and pushing you and always anxious, after a while, they annoy you. And I'm sure you know what I mean. Whereas kids or friends who kind of go, yeah, look, we'd love to have this happen and we're keen on this, but, let me know when you're ready. Or they'd say, we'd love it now, but, we understand process and time. But you feel a bit detached from it. It tends to draw you more towards giving to these people. Or if you've got a partner who's detached. And in fact, Sammy and my partner, was talking about this whole manifestation just 2 days ago. Because I was saying to her, one of the things I'm looking at doing is a webinar called The Ugly Truth in the next little while, because I've had a lot of single women and men asking me about doing one where we teach the really ugly truth about men and women and why relationships struggle and not getting partners. And one of the things I was talking with Sammy about was one of my challenges I've always had is I've struggled with commitment to one woman all my whole life. And that's always been a challenge for me as a guy. And one of the things that with Sammy, that I said to her, how was it that when I first started dating you, I had another girl and you honestly were the only girl I've ever met who was completely fine about it? And I actually asked her this. I said, I really desire to know this because I said, you really were fine. I said, I can read energy. I said, every other girl I've been with who said they were fine, they actually weren't. I would feel there's something in them that had an agenda to change it or would feel mad about it if things didn't change after a while. And she said, because in all honesty, she said, I laughed to myself because I'd always been saying for 2 years, I desire an unconventional relationship. She said, I was 23, 24. I didn't like men my own age. I didn't desire a conventional marriage, which in the Matrix, she said, I just wanted something completely wild and different. So she goes, I just pissed myself laughing and thought, well, I've certainly manifested that. I've got a guy I've got a great connection with, and it's anything but conventional. It's clearly my hologram. I've chosen this. He's been honest with me. I'm going to go with it. And so she just said that's what she did. And she said she just got on with life. And she said when I was with the other girls, she just got on with her own stuff. And she said she tuned into it also, and she could see that I was really not fully into it. And she just decided I'll let Warren work out his path and make his own choices in his own time. So she really did. She disconnected and detached herself, and while staying connected with me and allow me to make my own choices without putting anything on me. Because inevitably what happened was the other girl became more demanding and she became less demanding, and she stood out to me. So of course we're now together. And it's probably one of the most classic examples of how manifestation works. Because she was completely unattached, I connected and attracted to her more and more. So Yeah, Christine Norby, wow, what a story. Yeah, I felt to share that because it's a profound secret what I just shared with you, manifestation, because I remember hearing one of the wealthiest property developers in 2001, a guy I actually really liked. He was a very, very nice guy. And I met him at an event and ended up getting to come to his seminar, and I was in charge of his music as his DJ. So Max Kulev and Mitch will probably love to hear that. But yeah, I was in charge of, because we were doing some music and dancing to make the seminar a bit more fun, and I was a DJ. And one of the things that he said, and it really stuck in my mind, he said, the ultimate secret to wealth is being detached. And he said, this might sound really new agey in Buddhism, but he said, when I was really attached to being rich, he said, I always seemed to get dramas. And he said, I went to a seminar and learnt about this, and about this whole manifestation. And he was the one who first kind of got me. I'd learned about it before, but he put it in a different light. He said, I remember doing this exercise at a seminar, and for the first time in my life, I thought, actually, having money doesn't really change anything. And he said, sure. He said, you have more choices, but he said, you got more responsibilities. He said, you got more to worry about. You know, you got more management issues. Whereas he thought, the truth is, I've had times in my life with no money, and life was pretty cruisy. I just had to live simply. So he thought, it doesn't really matter if I have money or not, as long as I'm really on my path. And he said he really came to that point, and he let go, and he didn't care anymore. And he said when he started his business, he just didn't care. He started doing property development, and he just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it and see how I go. He said within 3 years, he was a multi-millionaire. And he said, but the honest truth was, he said, he still wasn't attached. He said he still saw his life as giving back to people. And he did. He was probably the only property seminar I've ever been to. I really resonated with the guy. And because he really genuinely spoke from his heart and spoke the truth. I remember Richard Branson super impressed me. Because when I heard him share in 2011, everyone sat there stunned, and he actually got heavily criticized afterwards by many, whereas I sat there and thought, you guys are absolute wallies. I mean, this is one of the most profound, I've heard. He spoke from his heart and was very, very soft, and all he said was, Eddie Maguire interviewing him and said, Richard, what's the secret to really being a successful businessman like you do? And he said, live your purpose and live your dreams and don't focus on the money. And then he goes, yeah, that's a little bit vague though, Richard. He said, for people, he goes, surely you've got to focus on your business and make money and all that, and you can't just live your purpose. He said, well, what's the purpose of life if you're not doing what your dream is and living your path? He said, when I started Virgin Records, he said, which is where I started, I was just a normal musician. He said, I wasn't making a lot of money, but he said, I didn't care because he said, I enjoyed playing music. And he said, I was really annoyed because all my friends were getting ripped off by record corporations who are exploiting their new status in music. So originally I set up Virgin Records to represent my friends and give them a better deal with the record companies and make sure they got a better deal of management. And he said, in all honesty, I didn't really care how I went. I just wanted all that was mattered to me. As long as I made more money than I spent, that's all that mattered. And he said, still to this day, nothing's changed. And he said, and I decided as soon as I hit too many staff, I'd split my company because I hated having big companies. I preferred small families. And to this day, he said, Virgin has no company that's got more than 50 staff. He said, we break things up. So Mitchell says, focus on the objective goal of being rich rather than the subjective. Yeah, exactly right. Too many focuses. Christine, that was why my manifestation changed to how I feel on the inside rather than the precise details of the outside. Yeah, that's beautiful, Christine. Really beautiful. Because the truth is, if you're truly happy and healthy in your heart, and you're healthy in your body, and you have a really, really great relationship with a wonderful partner, and let's say, but you're still working the money side out, I think everyone here could live with that and be very happy, couldn't you? And a great connection with Source, with God and me on their path. By contrast, imagine having lots of money, but having health issues, disconnected from Source and feeling miserable. So obviously the whole point is that we have it all. But the main thing to realize is that ultimately wealth is about well-being. And if you can get that and start to see money as an add-on to your life rather than a focus or anxiety, money will start to love and work with you more. Because money is like a man or woman. It's really an energy. Money attracts to where it's loved and someone who's attached and isn't clinging to them. All of you hate it when someone clings to you and everything wants to run from them. Money's no different. When you start clinging to money and being anxious about money, money just wants to get as far away from you as possible. And I feel that's getting some pretty profound realizations for quite a few people. So revision, we looked at everything from negative money experiences to investment experiences that don't work to speeding fines. All of that comes from your consciousness and what you're doing. We also spoke about altered brain states and the fact that ultimately, and this is why I did neurofeedback for a long time, because neurofeedback trains you to move into these deeper brain states like theta and 7 hertz or 4 to 6 hertz. The other thing I love is remote viewing, and some of you know I do remote viewing, and a few people of you are actually joining my remote viewing training, which I'm doing shortly, to help people to use it to improve your money-making skills, investment, and everything else. But remote viewing is spectacular for actually learning to move into a deeper state of mind. Because you start practicing quietening that brain state of yours, so you quieten your brain, you quieten your mind. So understand that if you can get yourself to move into a theta state at will, believe you me, that's when you start seeing miracles and healings happen regularly. William, my son, he does this pretty easily. It took me a long time to learn to do this. I can move into alpha very easily now, and I'm gradually getting better at moving into theta pretty much at will. So So this is something that's quite important for you to learn if you are really keen on mastering manifestation, is learning how to move into these deeper brain states and make this a training through meditation, through things like yoga can also help, and stretching. Exercise is also important. That can quieten your brain state. And that's why we do focused code clearing, so that also helps move you into these states, because that's when you can speed up your manifestations. Yogis, for example, many of the great yogis, like Indian yogis, actually trained themselves to where they could actually move into a sleep state while still being awake. And that's when you can see like instant miracles, like what Sri Baba can make things materialize in the hand. So from my understanding and study of consciousness and the miraculous, to be able, the closer you can move back to a sleep state, the more powerful you can get in your miraculous manifestation. So being able to move it down into a theta state and even starting to move closer to a delta state. So Mitchell, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer is an amazing book to help people understand and quieten their mind. No, excellent. Thank you for that, Mitch. Great tip. Yeah, there's quite a few good books that can do all that kind of stuff, but yeah, that's great. Yeah, Max Kulov says, what about dreams? Mexican shamans practice lucid dreaming regularly for manifestation. So yeah, no, absolutely. Dreams is another thing, because in dreams, Max, is when you're moving into that sleep state. So when you're in dreams, you're actually in that sleep state. In fact, Grace, my former wife, she practices dreaming quite regularly and even doing things in her dreams and taking control of her dreams. Because once you can learn to actually take control of your dreams, that's when you're actually learning to be able to be awake while being in a delta state. And I've done it a few times myself. Max has had dreams where he's doing the clearings and commands. Yeah, Sammy was saying that. She's actually had dreams where she was doing healings on herself, and I've had dreams of doing similar things. I can remember in 2002 having the clearest dream when I was in a deep delta state, and I actually saw myself running an awakening center. It's clear as a bell. This was in 2002 when I wasn't doing anything of the kind, and I saw myself, before that happening though, going through a time of fairly intense spiritual, where I saw myself awakening people in a room, in like a physical room, like running seminars. And then I saw myself actually having an attack by Satan. And as clear as a bell, I saw Satan coming for me in the room, and I was so scared I was shitting myself. But I saw myself standing my ground, and then I saw the whole thing unraveling and seeing that a lot of what I was afraid of was an illusion. And then as it happened, this door was opened, and I was taken into a broad place, And just like that, I was basically running an awakening center. And people from all walks of life, including new people I'd never met before, and even people that I knew from my past, were all coming to the center in wonder at feeling the presence of Source, and I'm basically feeling the presence of Christ, and having transformation. And I saw the Awakening Center was teaching everything from abundance to prosperity to health. So of course I now look in amazement, like 17 years later, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. And I've had people come from the past and new people all come into this center. So just realize that dreams and things like that can really do that. So Max just says, that's epic, that's awesome. I'd love to be able to unlock more of these other sorts of incarnational memories. Yeah, look, the more you do this, Max, and make it a habit and start expecting it, the more it happens. I every morning I do just so you know, I do meditation to start the day. I always spend the first half hour to an hour doing that, where I go into a deep state. I then go out with my boys and we do scripture, affirmation, keys of Enoch reading, and we speak stuff over ourselves, over our business, over our work, and over our people, and praying protection and speaking our manifestations that we're desiring and seeing happen. And the more we're doing it, the more it's like there's bright lights opening up. We're seeing a brighter and brighter light. I'm seeing more brightness. So this is part of how you start to manifest. So I mentioned last week also, which we will be covering more about these 5 principles over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Patience, divine right timing, blockages, faith, lessons. And we talked about the 5-step process, which I do, where you create the manifestation, you command it, you clear the blocks, you take some kind of action, and then let go and let God or detach from it. So today we're going to explore the science behind manifestation. So before we do that, any questions on what we've said or done so far, or comments you'd like to make? Christine says, I found in reading blocks of scriptures that my mind quickens and comes up with business ideas or something unrelated. Exactly. You will find that more and more. I don't believe people do that enough, Christine. I think that we get a lot of ideas we don't act on, and rather than just running with them quickly when we see them. So today is exploring the science behind manifestation. So last week we shared this. So this is just a refresher of the overhead here. But understand that science and religion or spiritual are starting to work together. And I shared about these different scientists who you'll be hearing a lot more from, who talk about the power of quantum physics. And so understand that religion or spirituality is going through a basic fundamental evolution or shift. Many spiritual leaders are now seeing how science and religion are congruent, and rather than an either-or approach, seeing how everything is interconnected and equally important. So right now, there is a quantum realm behind matter, and we're right now in the process of a fundamental shift. So I've mentioned here Carl Pribham, David Bohm, Amit Goswami, not Orit, and Dr. Joe Dispenza. So Mitch just writes here, Warren, you said the Bible is full of code, so this would help. That's how it would help you change state. Yeah, look, the Bible is full of ascension activation sequences, Mitch. And when you read the Keys of Enoch, this got me pretty excited because I've read many books before that talk about this coding, and was taught some of it from Dr. Ivan Pannon's teaching and Michael Drosnin's Bible Code, and just my own analysis. But in the Keys of Enoch, they specifically talk about the sequencing, and they were showing, for example, in Numbers, there's a series of very strange lists of genealogies and tribes and numbers of them, which seem to make no sense, but that actually correlates exactly to the very unique sacred geometry of the heavenlies and what they've measured exactly in science. So when you're reading these sequences, you're actually activating sequences. And the Keys of Enoch explain, for example, that the first 5 books of the Bible activates what's called the ascension codes in you, the foundation for ascension. So right now, and if you actually read in the first 5 books of the Bible, it was a command was given to the Hebrew community to read the law aloud in front of the people once a year, and told if they do that, they would prosper. We've actually in the process where we've just started doing that with the first 5 books of the Bible, based on what the Keys of Enoch says. We're we're reading them out loud. So myself and the boys are doing this together. And then the other 3 books they mentioned specifically was the book of Daniel, which is what's called Ancient Star Pleiadian Wisdom, the Star Wisdom, the book of Isaiah, which is the full sacred geometry activation of the Great Pyramid measurements, and in the book of Revelation, which is the activation of the new ascended earth and heavenly city. So reading these out aloud enables you to do this, Mitch. It starts to activate these codes. And in the past, when I've done this stuff, I've had times of great prosperity. And generally when I stop doing it is when I start having things go wrong. So Christine says it happens because reading the scriptures quietens the mind. Yeah. No, look, it's quite amazing. I mean, you've got to really, really read and study stuff. And what the Keys of Enoch explains is that the whole reason why as they put it, the religions and powers of the world have sought to undermine the sacred scriptures and the Keys of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that is because they've got all the codes for ascension and to break out of the cycle. But of course, the last thing that they want is to basically lose, a bit like a government losing all of its wealthy taxpayers, losing its people. They don't have anyone left to rule. So the last thing they desire is people ascending en masse. So one of the reasons they've stopped using this. There was actually a time in the past where people were starting to ascend quite regularly until they got in and managed to stop this happening. But this is something very few people know about. There were times in the past where people have started to ascend and leave the planet on in groups of people. And when this has started happening, they generally do everything to stop it. So Max says, he says, the archetypal foundation of the Bible is responsible for the success of the Western world. Yeah, absolutely correct. So absolutely correct. You actually look, and one of the great teachers of the underground movement, who wasn't what I call a religious man at all, openly said to me, he said the original Hebrew King James Bible in its pure form, he said, you look at any society that have built this into the Constitution or built it into their foundation, they've prospered. He said, look at the cities, places that haven't, and that's where you see most of the disasters and wars. So he said, right now we're doing everything to take that away from the Western world to get control of it. So it's pretty interesting when you actually study this and read some of the deeper teachings, and when you actually learn in the mystery schools and all this kind of stuff. So this is all important in manifestation and understanding that the universe is a one big giant hologram. And basically, holographic science and quantum physics now recognize that standard brain theories fail to explain neurophysiological problems and can effectively explain mysteries, and e.g. recognizing a face not seen for years, a person with one arm as a second arm working better, that kind of stuff, which we'll be having a look at now. So pretty much as well as the scientists, though, the great thing is the yogis talked about the spiritual esoteric realm of fifth dimension and how we can access it to manifest a change in our life situation. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, Buddha spoke about it as well heavily, and about detachment and being able to access these esoteric realms. Sri Baba, of course, taught about it. Dalai Lama, Yogananda and Sri Yukteswar. Even Bill McRae, a West Australian psychotherapist in the 70s, who was well before his time, was teaching how almost any illness or dis-ease, as he puts it, lack of ease, could be cleared through accessing higher dimensional or understanding of the higher realm of the mind. So scientists, yogis, psychotherapists are more and more starting to realize how much they have in common rather than seeing each other as the enemy. And it's an exciting time in that sense as this is starting to actually happen. So more and more healing and manifestation means are being taught with a psychological or scientific basis to help people achieve greater results. The whole basis of this scientific aspect of the course coming in happened because I was noticing that whenever I'd run clearing courses, people who are kind of very straightforward or simple were experiencing great healings and miracles, but very intelligent people were tending not to. So I realized that I had to find a bridge to help people who are what I call very intelligent or high frequency people. When I say high frequency, intelligent or overthinkers who tend to have that kind of weakness can actually get their head around it. I was a classic example of that, who once I was able to get my head around it, as well as my heart and spirit, I was able to do it easily. Christine Norby, that is me. Yeah, exactly. Look, that was me to a T, Christine. So I totally get it. So Carl Privum looked at how memories are stored in the brain. In 1936, he worked with a neuropsychologist, Carl Lashley, and found out by cutting one part of a rat's brain, the functions of that part would reappear in another part of the brain. The memories remain intact even though motor functions are partially impaired in the rats. So the conclusion from Privam was that memories are not localized at specific brain states but distributed throughout the brain as a whole. So the point of what Privam discovered was that just because someone loses part of their brain doesn't mean that part stops operating. And something that Master Raymond Grace actually does in some of his, and Natasha would remember this, he's actually put energetic thyroids in people who've had their thyroid taken out. Because the truth is, although the physical part gets taken out, the energetic part remains. It's just that people are shut off from the energetic or etheric part of the body that's still there. So for those of you who've had gallbladders removed or had thyroids removed and not realized and now go, oh, shit, I wish I'd known all this stuff now, I wouldn't have done it. You can actually activate an energetic thyroid or energetic gallbladder so your body starts behaving like it's got one. This is what neuropsychologist Carl Lashley found when working with Privam, where they would cut out a part of a rat's brain, like put EG to visual cortex, and that would actually appear in another part of the brain. Because the rats, unlike humans, of course, aren't thinking and overthinking it out, so it would just happen naturally. So it's like people losing an arm, their other arm naturally gains strength. So Penfield did experiments on epileptics and on their temporal lobes, and they found the same result. And he found even when he'd mislead the patient and tell them another part of the brain was being stimulated, he kept getting the same results that effectively showed this thing, that the brain would just know what was really going on and that nothing was ever missing in the brain. So Privam was kind of mystified how this all worked. And in the end, he concluded that a hologram theory was the only thing that would explain them. And he was doing all kinds of experiments where he would do a single laser light onto a holographic film. And what he was discovering was it was split into two beams, but both of them would basically still give the entire image. So in other words, even if they split the beam into two, rather than having half on each film, they would have the whole one on each one. And some of you may have seen this who've used laser beams or basically know how to use like an overhead projector. It will do this. It will actually put the same image. It won't say cut half and half when you do this. So basically what they discovered was that every small fragment of a piece of holographic film contained all the information recorded in the whole. So a bit like 4 televisions all containing the same image, if you think about it, or like 1 million televisions or 100,000 images. So all these images, all these televisions are basically, that's basically how they use television, is holographic work and laser work. So like you got like a television, like I've got my television, you've got your television, or I've got my screen, my computer screen, and we have 16 people in this webinar right now, all looking at their screen and all of us seeing the same thing. So that's basically what's happening here. So that's basically holographic theory at work. So Max says, following this with autistic people with amazing skills. Yeah, exactly right. You know, the brain has access to these abilities, Max, exactly. So scientists have discovered similar things in the nucleus of an atom in the solar system. So they found that one tiny, weeny, small, minuscule little baby atom has got the whole information of the whole universe. So what that means is that every single one of you on this webinar, listening to the live webinar or the recording right now, here's a miracle of what I'm saying to you. You contain the whole universe in you. And this is scientifically proven. This isn't some spiritual, which is true as well, where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within you. But when Jesus said that 2,000 years ago, well before science finally worked this out, he knew what it was saying. But the kingdom of heaven is within you. The whole universe is in you. All of us contain each other. In higher consciousness teachings, like in Ken Wilber or Claire Gray's, they talk about a level of what's called superconscious, where you become so aware, you actually have, you literally feel everyone's past lives as your own. You feel everyone's life, or your ancestors, everyone around you. Because the truth is, all of you are in me. I am in all of you. We're all in each other. We're all connected as one. That is why when any one of us on this webinar are struggling, it slows down the vibration of the whole group. If, for example, one person, that's why I'm so strict. If I see someone's got a negative energy and they're not listening, I'm very quick to kick people out of my groups. And some of you may or may not know that, but we regularly kick people out of our Awakening Within. I regularly get rid of clients. So I don't do it to be a dickhead. I just do it because when I see someone's got a low consciousness and they're not willing to change, and I don't mind if someone's consciousness is low, but they're really keen to change. Because otherwise, what's the point of me doing this work? The whole point of the awakening within the City Awakening is to help people start at a low consciousness to basically move to a higher consciousness. But if people aren't willing to actually do that, then yeah, get rid of them. You heard James is laughing because someone he knows put a very, very negative comment on my Facebook wall, like a really horrible comment in response to something implying that I was a totally intolerant person. There was no sense of asking questions, so I just blocked them, and they were a bit stunned and were complaining to him. And I have this regularly. I kick someone off who came on my wall and just abused me on the wall. I just kicked them off. I have absolutely no tolerance for that consciousness, because if you tolerate it and allow it, it lowers the vibration of my page, of my group, everyone around me. So let's say I had one person on here who was challenging me, and I've had this happen before. I had a guy in my last one of my last courses who was actually challenging me, like on the group. And at first, when it was questions, I answered it. Then he openly started correcting me and on the thing, and then he actually challenged me, and pretty much said, "You know, you're speaking crap." And I just said to him, I pretty much said to him, "Look," I said, "you need to revoke this straight away, or I'll kick you straight off this webinar, and you're out." And he did. He apologized and he backed off, but I still found he was a little bit like that. So I lost interest in having him in the groups and got rid of him and kind of pushed him away. And in his case, he just pulled away eventually of his own accord. But the whole point is we are all interconnected. So realize if you're in a relationship with a low consciousness person, rest assured, do not think it won't affect you. There's an old saying, a bad apple will make the good apples go off, not the good apples will not make the bad apple go good. So if you've got someone of low consciousness in your life who will not change, and you continue to associate and be close to them, understand it does affect you, okay? So you either have to stop seeing them or give them the rules to be around you. And one of the most profound consciousness spiritual teachers I remember years ago who I learnt with tells a story about how he went to stay with someone's place, and they just told him, they said, "Look, you know, we need to let you know you know, I think it was one of the children has epilepsy, and they have on average 2 or 3 fits a day, so don't be scared when it happens." And he calmly said, "Oh no, it's fine. They won't have any epileptic fits while I'm here for a week." They said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I take authority over the spirits." So he said, "I don't let the spirits play up in front of me." And for the whole week, the child was in perfect health, and the parents couldn't believe it. And they were stunned, going, "Wow, that's amazing." As soon as he left, within 2 hours, the child had a full-on epileptic fit. Now, the point was, as he said later on, he said, the parents never asked me, "Well, can you heal him or pray for his healing?" So they didn't ask me, so I didn't do it. They just assumed he had epilepsy and was stuck with it. And so he said, I just turned up and said, "No, I don't put up with that." It was quite interesting because I was in a situation with a family event the other day where I was over there and someone started getting into an argument with you know, one of a related person with a close person in my life, and it was going on for about 2 minutes, and I just said, "Oh look," I said, "this is getting awkward." And so I said, you know, do I need to get out of here and go somewhere else, or go stay somewhere else, because we're going to be staying overnight there. And you could just see there was a complete shock for them, because they were clearly not used to anyone doing that to them and used to being able to carry on how they want. They go, "Oh, no, no, no." I said, "Yeah, because understand, this is awkward for me. You know, it's the first time I've met you properly, and I think I'm going to go." And "Oh, you should have seen them." The whole thing was sorted really quickly. And that was my way of taking authority over the consciousness there, saying, I will not allow that. I have a strict rule around that now. If I turn to someone's place and they started undermining me or my kids or my partner, I'm out of there. And it's because I know these laws of consciousness. You know, if you want to fuck up your manifestations massively, then go and hang out with people of low consciousness and stay around them. If you have a partner like that, you have a real issue, and you need to pull them in the line, or if they won't listen to you, you need to seriously contemplate being in that relationship. Otherwise, you are going to have challenges in manifesting all the things that you desire. So science shows you this, as you can see here. So I even mentioned that Einstein's theory of relativity, the calculating the precise distance between an electron at one point in time and another point in time. And a lot of this went out the door when you consider holographic theory. And Einstein realized that a lot of it didn't actually apply towards the end of his life. So Pribham basically, at the time, there was a prevailing belief of one-on-one correspondence between the way the eye sees an image and the way the image is in the brain. And they eventually realized that how the brain sees something is different to how the eye sees it. So they're actually completely different, because one's holographic, one is literal in 3D. So the eye sees it in 3D, the brain sees things holographically, and this is a problem with art. And I remember when I learnt this in art, when I went to art school, I was taught this. And I used to be the most shittiest drawer in the world, where my kids would burst out laughing at my drawings. And after doing an art school and was taught about this, and it was a brilliant art teacher, she taught actually holographic. Yeah, Mitch is going, wow, yeah, it's amazing, Mitch. So she showed us why we all draw like shit. And after that one thing, the boys couldn't believe it. I actually was drawing quite reasonable. You know, I certainly wasn't like, you know, what's his name? You know, Van Gogh or Picasso, or any of those guys, or Michelangelo, but I actually was drawing like a decent pictures, just because I learnt this one thing. So this also means that memory, vision is distributed and holographic. So holographic theory explains how our brain can store memories, how we recall and forget things, ability to see a familiar face and remember who it is. So it's like a holographic storage place. Now, Paul Peach of Indiana University was determined to prove Pribram wrong and said this guy's speaking out of his ass. So what he did was he got some salamanders and he removed the brain and put it back in soon afterwards. Because his theory was, and Pribram agreed with him, if the salamander's feeding pattern was localized in the brain, the position was critical. It didn't matter where it was positioned, this would prove holographic theory. So the critical thing was, is it important where the salamander's brain is put? If it has to be in the exact right position, then this proves holographic theory is bullshit. If you can put it wherever you want and it still works, this proves holographic theory. And it said they go into a stupor, but once the brain was put back, the behavior returned to normal. He even put the brain upside down and fed normally. 700 operations, each one same results. Peach became an ardent supporter. And Mitchell says one person can see a beautiful rainy day and the other will see that it's dark and stormy and project negative thoughts. Exactly. Yeah, you can have 3 people grow up in a childhood and have different perceptions of the same childhood. And I'm sure some of you have experienced that. Like one person will say their parents were great, one person will say they were awful. So it entirely comes down to your perception and your values and things like that. So very important to realize in manifestation, that same thing. There's a very famous guy called Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp. When everyone was dying and suffering, he decided to change his consciousness around it and saw it as a positive and a life-transforming experience. And every time the guards would beat him, in his heart, he'd be giving thanks, and he would see himself as seeing out of the concentration camp, helping others. And within no time, they stopped beating him, and within another period of time, he became the leader of the camp, and then he eventually left there and became a motivational speaker. So changing your focus can do incredible things. So, as I mentioned here further, prevailing science was scared of holographic theory. Pribram argued if holographic was true, coffee cups, trees, or table lamps might not exist, or even exist in the way we believe them to exist. That is, matter is preceded by consciousness. And this is what now has started to become the belief, that matter is preceded by consciousness. Your belief leads to what you actually see. Electrons, and this is important to know, is that particles and waves, this is a really powerful scientific thing. Like, for example, the image you see on your television is originally a wave. It's just shooting electrons. But the electrons then turn into particles and become an image on a screen. And the truth is, even the solid images you're seeing can be in waveform. So in other words, if you can really go into a deeper dimensional viewing or holographic viewing of, say, your computer screen, it's actually a wave. In other words, it can be liquid. David Wilcock in his synchronicity key, or the source field, the source code field, they've discovered that many of the yogis, how they walk through walls, because they no longer see them as walls, they see them as liquid or see them as energy. That's how Jesus was able to walk through walls, because he didn't see them as walls. That's why he walked on water, because he no longer saw it as water, he saw it as solid. So the truth is, if you walk on it and see it as solid, and it's a bit like the fire walking that some people do, where they walk on it and they no longer see it as hot. And I can remember when I got rid of my speeding fine, that's literally what happened in that moment. And I love to say it works 100% of the time, but like Sammy, for example, and I were driving on the road, going up to the toll thing, and what she was doing was projecting light bulbs coming out of her hand, destroying the toll cameras and blocking them. And 3 of the 5 cameras did not flash it. So 2 of them did, and it was like, and like we said, that's the whole point where I said it's not always perfect. As you perfect it, it's great. But she got to the stage where she was able to basically like completely neutralize 3 of the cameras. So basically the 3 cameras did not even take a picture of her. And I've done that with some speeding fines. I've literally made them disappear out of courtrooms. The most profound one when I was in the car, pulled over, and I honestly, in that moment, I was in a very deep state because I'd been listening to, in fact, some of you know Ed Stratcher, some of Ed Stratcher's webinars. I was in a very deep state. And then I was doing some of my own meditation. So I was in a really deep state as I was driving, which is why I missed the lights, that it was red. And so when he pulled me over, I just kept seeing the police computer being erased. I saw myself in space looking down on Earth, kind of like as a much higher being. I saw myself just wiping up the police record, and I just knew it was done. And the police came to me and said I had a clean record, so they'll let me off, which at the time I didn't have a clean record. So the conclusion is that quantum only time it ever manifests as particles when we're looking at them, arguably they don't even exist until we do. Max says manifestation is purest. Exactly. I would love to say that I'm perfect at it. I would say that I'm getting better and better each day at it. I notice that there's times I'm in a deep state and I can literally change water into the purest water just because I see it that way. Other times I find if I'm a bit more distracted, I don't get quite the same accuracy. I especially see it in remote viewing. There's days I'm in such a deep state, I can literally, I just know the results of games. I do my remote viewing and I just know who's going to win. I put the biggest bet of my life I ever put just about 3 weeks ago. It was a game where I just knew that I knew I got it right. And I could see the energy of it, and I won a huge amount. And then by contrast, I had a period about 10 days ago where for 2 days I just could not, I was distracted with the business. There was a lot going on, and there were a lot of issues with staff, and as many of you remember, all these issues around times of webinars and getting them wrong, which I was running around sorting. So when I was remote viewing it, I think the reality was I was in a beta state most of the time. So I noticed my accuracy dropped off. So it's important to realize that about manifestation too. There can be other factors in the way. You can see here that Bohm and Bohr, 2 other great physicists. Bohm was the one who started to discover strange interconnectedness between unrelated events. So he was discovering that electrons, for example, that according to Einstein's theory of relativity, if it should go in a straight line, that wasn't actually happening. The electron would be one place and then just vanish and appear somewhere else. But he found things like that happening. And Niels Bohr went one step further. He's argued if subatomic particles only come into existence in the presence of an observer, it's meaningless to speak of them as existing until they're actually observed. So he held firm against Einstein and said, as they don't exist until they're observed, they can't be thought of as independent. They're part of one big interconnected system. So what he concluded was that subatomic particles only come into existence in the presence of an observer. So until you see it, it doesn't exist. So you don't speak of it as existing. That, by the way, is a secret of manifestation. And that is why the moment you label someone as autistic or got arthritis, you brought it into existence. So you can see why that if you're seeing the images or getting the symptoms of illness and you name it, you then manifested it. So some of you are going to go, oh my gosh, you're going to get what I'm saying. I feel like 2 or 3 of you just gone, oh my hat, 2 or 3 of you just got what I just said then. If that was you, just say me. Because basically, when things don't actually exist, they don't actually exist till you speak them out and manifest them. Yeah, Paul Dennis. Yeah, it's great, Paul. If you get that, mate, your finances will transform. And for James too, because things only exist once you actually speak of them as existing. And this is what Bohr discovered. So he said that they can't be thought of as independent things. So they're all part of an indivisible, interconnected system. So this is the thing. This is why I don't speak of things as existing. And you speak of these things as existing, because once you do. So once you observe them or you desire to observe them, this is the whole secret of manifestation. Mitch says a huge part of my ayahuasca journey on Saturday was around projection of judgment and labels on people, myself, past. Exactly, yeah. The moment you put judgment, understand, Mitch, because we're interconnected. This is why Christ said, judge not, lest you be judged. Because the problem is, if you judge someone else or put rejection on them, you can actually change someone's reality for the worse. So if you say, oh yeah, that person's always broke and they're useless and they're just hopeless to be looking after their kids, that person, even though they don't know logically they can feel the energy of what you said because we're energetic beings. This is why many women, they don't know how, but they know it. Like, I speak to so many women and they know when men are sexually like looking at them. Like, they know when they're walking down the street, or they know when they're talking to men and they feel men are just sexually interested in them. And many women feel constantly energetic rape, and many hot women actually shut down sexually and have problems in relationships because of that reason. And this is, I spoke to a shaman who said he spends much of his work counseling women who basically are hot women who he said are in their 30s, who either haven't got a good relationship or have just never been able to get one, or the one that they're in now, they're just not getting sexually satisfied because they can't open up. And that's one of the reasons why, is because they're so used to it, they learn to shut down. So it's very important to realize that we do feel, and we're all interconnected. So Max says, it's like black magic, Warren. Yeah, absolutely. 100% correct, Max. It is. Many people practice black magic without even realize they're doing it, and putting curses on people. Christine Norby said, the Lord said, let there be light, and there was light. By the way, it's white. Yeah, exactly, Christine. You speak it out and it happens. This is, by the way, why I'm clearing myself constantly, because people can be projecting things on me regularly without me realizing it. So I'm clearing myself regularly. Mitchell, yes, and you project it on yourself. Yeah, if you judge someone else severely, you actually start projecting it on yourself, and especially if it's not justified. If you project something on someone that's not justified, the energy must go somewhere, so it comes back to you. So let's say you project poverty or lack on somebody who's prosperous because you're feeling jealous of them, but that person's got a good energetic wall and they're protecting themselves, it'll bounce back on you and you'll actually start getting poverty. So be very careful what you're projecting towards other people. So Mitchell, lust is basically energetic rape. You've got to be careful, Mitch. I mean, it's funny, I used to regularly, imagine having sex with different women and all that kind of stuff. And obviously if it's a porn star, they're allowing it. The very fact they're on porn, they desire it. But I learned to be very careful. And what I end up doing is that if I'm imagining, when I would start imagining girls sexually, I'd tune into them and almost ask permission. That's what I would do. And most of the time I'd get a no, so I wouldn't go further. Occasionally I'd get a yes, so I'd go further. As time's gone on now, I hardly do it at all because I've got a great partner. And the truth is, yeah, you can start affecting with other people's consciousness as well as your own. So that's where I've got to. And it's why Jesus made this statement about when you lust or think about a woman sexually, you've done it. So I'm a little bit, it's one area I'm a little bit careful about, because I've learned that it's, without realizing it, you can do that. And some of the women, like, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but Natasha, who's a very aware woman in this webinar, she told me, she said she knows when she can feel men kind of latching onto her sexually, and it kind of affects her energy field. And I'm sure many women would tell you that. So, question. So it's a good thing to kind of be aware about how this all works, because your consciousness will increase quite dramatically and your manifestation will improve. And it's something that I actually learned as well. And Natasha says it calls other female issues. I would even go as far as to say energetically, I learned that when I was single or when I had different girls, if I started lusting after a girl sexually and imagining sex with them, it virtually never happened in the physical. So if I really desired a girl physically, the best thing for me to do was pull all my sexual energy away from them and just imagine things to them like a really nice connection, and I got on well with them and we became good friends, and I would detach from the whole thing and say, if we're meant to have sex, it will happen. Because I would find that if I had sex with someone, which I'd done it the first way, even if I did pull it off, which was rare, it wouldn't be that enjoyable. So this was something I noticed. I don't know if any men or women know what I'm talking about, but this was just an observation I've never shared in a webinar before, but I learnt myself, that when I would actually imagine and let go, and I know one of my mentors told me that when he actually would imagine, he was at this party once and the hottest stripper in the room, he said to his friend, watch this. He said, all the guys are sexually, leering at her. So he said he sat there and deliberately with his consciousness, he just sent love towards her. And all he did was to send love and said, you're a sweet girl. I really just, want you to know that I love you in a loving way. And just sent like really kind thoughts towards her, that she was a sweet girl, and he was smiling at her in his heart. And he said his friend was absolutely astonished when just without, as she's talking to her friend, she kind of started looking behind her, but she turned around and looked at my mentor and she smiled at him and blew him a big kiss, and she mouthed the words, I love you too, and turned around and kept talking. And everyone was like, and his friend was, how did that happen? He goes, well, he said they're very sensitive to energy, and strippers are especially sensitive. So she could feel him sending her love. So it's quite an interesting thing for your men to learn, this consciousness. You can change your relationship. So yeah, match, so beautiful, power of intention, lack of expectation. Yeah, exactly. When you send real love to someone and kind connection towards them. And I found that many of my greatest, connections I've had, like Sammy and I can truly tell you, she told me one of the things she loved about me was she turned up to meet me in Perth, used to guys cracking onto her sexually because she's got a great body. And she said she was a little bit stunned because the whole time she's with me, I never made a move on her, and she couldn't even feel me sexually moving energy towards her. So she actually, basically, it brought her towards me. And Max says, I learned remote seduction a while ago, and the essence of it was actually quite pure, creating a space of love and trust and an invitation and peace energetically before interacting. Yeah, look, I've done that, Max. What I've often done is when I desire to talk to a girl, I'll tune into them remotely and I'll be very respectful. I'll just say to her, hi, I really like your energy. And I get a picture of her in my mind. I say, I think you're really lovely. You seem really nice. I'd like to connect with you more. Are you open to that? And if I feel the energy move from their heart towards mine and say, yes, I'd like to, invariably if I go and speak to them, it'd be very warm. If I'd feel a block and I go and talk to them, it would be a... So it's very useful, this stuff. This can make your life a lot easier, both financially, relationships, everything. So, love it. Asking if you get a yes or no and respecting the answer. Exactly, Natasha. No, it is. I think a lot of women will have a lot more happiness and more comfort opening up their feminine energy in their hearts if they can feel that men respect their energy more and start associating with men who do this. And something Grace, I remember she learned to do about one. She would actually feel when a man was doing it, and she would send a message to them and put up a wall and actually say, get away from me now. And she said the men would feel it, and so they stopped doing it. So Bohm, as you can see here, he also noticed about electrons behaving as part of an interconnected whole. And although individual movements were random, he was amazed how the electrons produced effects that were well organized. And basically, Bohm concluded that everything was really interconnected, but there was a new field called the quantum potential which pervaded all space and of which influence didn't diminish with existence. So, yeah, Bohm concluded particles like electrons do exist and this new quantum realm. And that's, of course, where many physicists are now accepting this quantum realm where there's no time, no space, no distance, and everything is really interconnected. So to summarize, Bohm said wholeness classical theory taught the state of a system as a whole was merely the result of the interaction of its existence of component parts. So that was what Bohm was saying, that was incorrect. And Bohr argued the opposite. He claimed the behavior of the parts was organized by the whole. In other words, they're not independent, but they're part of an indivisible whole, and only wholeness is the reality. That was what Bohr argued. Whereas what classical theory said was that the whole was the interaction of its component parts, whereas Bohr was saying the opposite. He was saying that the whole, basically, the behavior of the parts ultimately depends upon the whole. That, by the way, is what a church was meant to be originally. The original Ascension churches were meant to be that, where the whole basically determined the parts, whereby being part of a whole, you come under the covering or energy and then you change. I'm sure many of you who's noticed that since joining the awakening movement, the City Awakening, and becoming part of this whole, you've just noticed a change in your overall connection with the masters, more peace in your life and everything. Who's just noticed that happening? Those of you who've been coming regularly, you've just seen your life shifting and changing. Yeah, because you're becoming part of a whole, and that's really geared towards that way, and where all of us are moving to shift, which also means who's keen for growth, which means if we started to go off track, for example, and we started to, let's say, misuse our authority, which is why the masters judge so severely when you do this, and we started using our positions to say, get the women in the bed, for example. And I know I was talking with the boys about this, and I said, understand that, you got to be very mindful of that kind of stuff, because, you can muck up a work very, very quickly when you do that kind of stuff. And then it affects everyone, because then other people start feeling the energies change and they start doing it. And I was in a church where this happened, where it was an amazing leadership, and then the leader started having an affair behind his wife's back. And you know, in that the day he started, within 2 weeks, a huge proportion of his church had gone and cheated on their partners, or just had these wild sexual urges and were going out having sex with all different people randomly. I found myself that although I didn't do that, I was waking up in the night and getting overwhelmed with sexual energy. So just understand that. Oh, that's lovely. Mitchell says, everything is flowing, mate. Have an incredible amount of love for your manifestation in my hologram. Thank you, Mitch. I love what you say. You're very encouraging and what everyone's saying here. So thank you, everyone. So although our everyday lives have a specific location, a subquantum level, the quantum potential location doesn't exist. Schrodinger's cat, that's something which is a bit hard to explain, and so I'll let those of you who are really scientifically driven look at that one. But it's a very interesting study for those of you who are interested, where basically it's about a guy who did an experiment to try and argue quantum theory. Well, he didn't like quantum theory, and ironically, in his attempt to disprove it, ended up kind of proving it. Because classic materialist theory says after 60 minutes, one of two things has happened. The cat is dead or alive, no in between. While the quantum theory states the cat is half alive, half dead, which he said was absurd. Whereas, of course, what's really come out since in quantum theories is saying, well, if you think of holographic film, there's two possible futures happening. One probable future is that the cat is alive, one is that it's dead. So it's not half alive or half dead. Schrodinger was thinking far too literally, like in literal way of thinking. Whereas, as we know, you can have 4 televisions or 100 televisions or 1 million televisions all showing the same image. Likewise, some realities could show the cat alive, some could show it's dead. Mind you, that's how remote viewing works in a sports game. Like today, I did 3 remote views on the Minnesota Wild versus the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know how it's gone now. But I got like, the first one clearly said that the Wild would win. The second one was unclear. The third one said the Sabres. So I pulled out of my bet in the end. And so far, the game, when I last checked, was going crazy. Like, it was going literally like it was like 1-0, then 1-1, then 3, then 2, then 3-1, then 3-3, and now. The other ones which I did, I'd only just started, but they were a little bit more clear. So that one was a little bit more clear. So we'll see what happens at one. Generally, I find that where all the readings tend to line up, 80% of the time it works. When it's a bit mixed, probably more like 50, 60%. So the better argument is, like we said here, because the cat doesn't actually exist until we observe it, our consciousness collapses the cat's wave function and determines its state. And that's pretty much what quantum physics says. So the cat doesn't exist until observed. So 60 minutes later, our consciousness determines it. I've found this to be so true. I found that even how I'm observing a sports game, I found that if I actually, I've even in the past sabotaged my own views, and I've also changed them. I got a very clear reading on a game, and it was going perfectly. And then I let fear come into me, and I can remember getting this picture in my mind where I saw my team losing and having a miraculous loss, and that's what happened. So what you observe really does determine why remote viewing can be also combined with remote sensing. And remote sensing or remote influencing means where you actually learn to actually influence the outcome. So you can see the outcome and then also create a manifestation around it. So in summary, first principle, interconnectedness, every part is contained in a whole, as we mentioned here. So every fragment of the piece of film contains the whole. The same with the atom, and the atom contains the whole universe. 2 is space and time are not linear, but quantum, sorry, not quantus. We saw this from the various physicists. So in the holographic universe, we especially see how this works. And more physicists are realizing how true this is. So basically, space and time are not linear, but quantum. So not seeing past or future, but seeing present. The Tribeca code, the 3 circles merge into one in the manifestation. Timeline or future regression therapy is where you bring the future into the now or bring the past into the now. Timeline, I've done this regularly. I do future regression therapy where I go into the future and see myself in a year from now, and I talk to my future self a year from now, and it's amazing, you know, how accurate the information can be. The third one I've got is our matter is preceded by consciousness. And this is really important. So The Secret was the first major teaching that came out in the world about this. As Pribham and the holographic universe shows, once you realize it's the truth, coffee cups, trees, table lamps might not exist or even exist in the way we believe them to exist. It's all an illusion. The mystics were right. So the exciting conclusion is you actually can create your own world completely. And as you can see above in the first bullet point, mystics claimed consciousness was what created matter. Jesus, for example, said by faith and belief you could create anything. Science took 2,000 years, but finally has caught up to what the mystics said 2,000 years ago, that consciousness creates matter. So it's an exciting time, because scientists originally said it could all be explained rationally, and they only looked at matter, and this would explain your thinking. So ultimately, once you see this as the truth, everything you're seeing doesn't exist. This can be your path to learning the miraculous, where you can learn to walk through water eventually, where you can certainly learn to get a parking spot when you need one instantly, where you can learn to manifest money as you need it, to just know that you'll get clients, but you'll just know, but if you're manifesting 10,000 a month, for example, but you will have it, and you already have it, and things like that. So here's the conclusions as well. And here's principle 4. Particles can become waves, which we discovered. That quantum ever exists as particles is when we're looking at them. They don't exist until we focus on them. So here's the conclusions yet again. Classic physics is questionable. Quantum makes more sense. Interconnectedness of all things. But the individual things are spread throughout the whole. The parts make up the whole. Space and time don't exist and are all one. Particles can become waves or vice versa, and alternate timelines realize a strong possibility and make sense. Okay, so any questions before we do a clearing to finish off today? Because I feel today that was pretty heavy, and I'm not going to really do manifestations today, other than just to basically do a clearing today to clear blocks for you and then get you to do some homework. And what I'm going to do is just put this on silent and give you a minute break to ask questions while I go quickly and just go to the bathroom. Okay, everyone. So, no questions? Excellent. So, let's go through now. What we're going to do is do a Bioveca. We're going to do a clearing on a couple of codes. So I want you to breathe into your nose for 4, hold for 4, and breathe out of your mouth for 8. So breathe out of your nose for 4, hold, and out of your mouth for 8. Just keep breathing. So breathe through your nose for 4, and hold, and out for 8 counts. And just notice as you're moving into a deeper and deeper state. It is commanded by the laws of the golden liquid realms and the chemical powers that the Bioveca code is used to clear all blockages, implants, negative energies, curses, impacts of people's projections or thoughts or anything of that kind interfering with their manifestation ability, especially around finances, health, and love now. And just feel that come into you, just the breath of God coming into you. Just breathe in and inhale this Bioveca code straight into your third eye. As you breathe in. And as you breathe out, just replicate it through all of your 15 chakras now by intention. And what you're doing is you're installing that Bioveca code into the center of the earth and throughout your connection to the earth and all your chakras. Upgrading all DNA templates, soul programming, and activating the grids on the earth where each and every person is now. And now just take a sip of water. And now just what we're going to do is just focus your eye on the center of this code now. This is the golden activation code, analogical experiences, removing all analogical experiences, past traumatic events, especially around money, finances, health, Just breathe this into your third eye and feel the whole code encapsulate through your whole energy field. So the whole code encapsulating into you now. Feel yourself becoming one with the code. So it's like a sun, like a golden light full of it comes into your energy field and saturates you now. It is commanded by the laws of the golden liquid realms and the chemical powers that this golden activation analogical experiences code of R be used to clear all analogical experiences, its occupants, anything of that kind, blocking people from manifesting absolute abundance in their trading, their betting, their investing, their businesses, in their work with their clients now. Wow. Allow this golden activation code to activate each person to new levels and new dimensions and higher frequencies now. Okay, so take a glass of water and just share your experiences. Jason, totally overwhelming sense of calm. Max, sense of peace in my heart. Yeah, it's beautiful, Max. Great, Jason. 1111 too, Max, when you wrote that over here. Sense of peace in my heart. It's 1111 here and 111 if you're in Queensland. Same with Mitch. My heart and my solar plexus is exploding. Same with you, Jason. 1111 up here. James, wow, total calm, eyes pouring. That's beautiful. What about the rest of you? Max, beautiful peace. Paul, feel energy going through my eyes and calmness. Yeah, because what I was doing here, just so you all know, I was clearing out analogical experiences and blocks around manifestation for you, just for everyone, just giving you a bit of a kickstart. Nolene, I became the code, illuminated light from my heart center, felt sharp pain in my heart as a block was removed, and then light and color pulsing with heartbeat. Yeah, look, I just get this sense, Nolene, that you're just going to the next level just with your trading. It's just like I see some small shifts coming for you. Not like it's not going to be like a mind blowing where your life's going to change overnight, but I see things starting to just happen and get better and better. It's hard to explain, but I'm seeing. But if you see the light in you just growing and growing, you're just going to find you're just going to start winning more and more often. And I see you over the next little while becoming very successful in your trading, just very gradually, very systematically. Fiona, feeling calm and yawning. James, my eyes go to REM state. Nolene just became at one with the code. Yeah, it's great, Nolene. Christine, yep. Christine Evans, the gold energy hit me when I first saw it. Head really tight, clear now. Natasha just became one with the code. Christine Norby, recognizing consciousness around me, blocking people, hang on to their illness, about opening, cannot work with them. Max, it's amazing. The whole process can be so synchronous once we get beyond these IDs and mental identifications. Yeah, look, that's all it is, Max. It's just what we've identified with. And just realize how much crap we've had conditioning into us, really, since birth, really. Just if you really ponder it true. Just think how much we've been getting this stuff happening, really from birth and from young. Requires that much to block us, yeah. Testament to our power. Tears from knowing. That's wonderful, everyone. So yeah, look, just realize now, but as you start to do that, that you will start to see these shifts as you do this. So this is your homework for this week, ready for next week, because we're going to start getting into some, like I said, you'll find each week now, write down your manifestation intentions in a language attracting fulfillment, number one. So you know more what I mean now when I say that. Just really write your intentions down in a language that attracts fulfillment. In other words, don't write, I don't want to be in debt. That's kind of, you need to be saying, like it may be that it is such and, but basically I manifest a complete release of all of my promises to be in an abundant financial state with all people, or something like that. Or around being in excellent health in your back, joints and spine if you've got neck pain, or having excellent, abundant love in your heart and having an amazing connection with a wonderful partner, if that's what you're looking at doing, who's just right for you right now, or something like that. Then consider anything that might be incomplete in your life and map these out. Really map these out. And then feel free to email them to me if you really desire to as well. You can email them to me and I'll be more than happy to review them and basically refine them with you. So please feel free to send them across to myself and I'll be more than glad to do that for you. So any final questions before we end today? That's a good question. Which address to send to? I'm changing to a City Awakening address, but for now I'm still going to use my Wealth Safe until I finalize that change. So there it is. Any more questions before we end today? Yeah, Max, me too. Looking forward to it. You're a great group. Really looking forward to seeing what happens with people here. Great, Nolene. Thanks, James. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next session. And I agree. It's a great group, by the way. Thanks to everyone who's sharing and encouraging each other. I like the way the group is forming on this one. It's like people are interacting a lot more with each other on this one, which is fantastic. So that's really great to see that happening.